I never released an instrumental record, and then all of a sudden I'm got the balls to release 4, right? In a row before I even prove that I've could make my money back or whatever. So it's not about that, but it's more like uh, I'm a nervous artist. I feel like this is the first time I've done this, and there's part of me that second guesses sometimes, which is the worst feeling in the world, to second guess. But I am confident that each one of these pieces are different enough with the same template.
First I say, what we're gonna do. Then you say, I don't know, what do you want to do? What we're gonna do, what you want to do.
I have an idea.
You're gonna dig this.
The Fly Fidelity podcast
Is the solution. It's the best.
Check it out.
You want to get super fly.
Details just ahead.
Do you love
Credible content,
but hate?
How long you have to wait?
And who wants
super thick and frothy dumpster juice with rat corpses in it?
There's a better way.
Fly Fidelity.
Fly Fidelity.
Fly Fidelity.
Fly Fidelity.
Fly.
Fly Fidelity.
Fidelity.
Fly Fidelity podcast.
Fly Fidelity, baby. Fidelity, baby. Fidelity.
With your host, Luke Bailey.
Welcome to the program. This week we're joined by renowned Rhymesayers producer Anthony Davis, better known as Ant, one half of the legendary duo Atmosphere. On this season premiere, we talk about his 30-year-in-the-making debut, Collection of Sounds Volume 1, some of his most profound music and memories, producing for Atmosphere and Brother Ali, as well as his creative insights into his craft. All of this and so much more on this episode. I'm curious, for a debut that spans 30 years in the making, how did you go about negotiating a balance between deciding which eras to showcase and deciding which styles of songs to feature for this collection specifically?
It was at first there was a part of me that wanted to just do a little more of the 4-track era of things I had, and then I wanted to show a little bit of because I was going through I had a lot of my 4-track stuff from back in the 90s was put down to Pro Tools, and so it was easy to go to those things and get little ideas. Most of it's trash, but the things that were good, I was like, I'll use those as like, maybe I could use those as interlude pieces or something like that. So there was that concept, and then the idea that obviously I have brand new things that I want to put out, but I don't have a home for them, so I could try to incorporate that, and some of the stuff I've done with musicians, where my man G Coop in specific, I was like, oh man, they don't have a home either, so I have so many things that I want to show, but I want to put it into like a place that kind of made sense. I wanted to, in my head, I was trying to tell some kind of a story of like, this is this piece, this volume 1 is basically the basic fundamentals of what I do and the basic fundamentals of where I come from to be part of Atmosphere. Now, I hadn't put it quite like that before, but just saying it right now, it feels very true.
Well, speaking of where you come from, one of the things that struck me about the track list specifically was that some of these songs are dated with the year they were made. Do you remember making many of these instrumentals down to the specifics of any significant life events or projects that you might have been making around the same time?
To a degree, but the some of these things, like there was a CD beat, like I have all these CDs that I transferred also to Pro Tools and stuff, but I had, and some of them I haven't, because you can't even read the damn things, but they're from like the early 2000s when you would have like just throw random beats on CDs, like all,
Yeah.
that's how we did it back at that time. And so I just have stacks and stacks of that. And I literally just was flipping through the March batch of 2005. And there'd be like, 30 things on there or something like that. And I skipped through it, and that one kind of just struck me. So that's the only reason I even know the date. And I don't remember making that one at all. I don't remember anything about it. I don't remember what that sample is. I don't remember anything. But I thought it was a weird for the time at the time to do that. It just felt like, oh, okay, I could show this. But it was also on a beat CD that had things that I'm known for, which was kind of funny. Like I think like a version of the Yesterday beat, which ended up being a pretty big Atmosphere song, was on that CD. There was things like that. So it was like, oh, this is interesting. I was, where you go as an artist, sometimes you're like, oh, I was basically doing that style and that style in the same week. You forget sometimes,
I can imagine.
And then yeah, and then sometimes I some of the stuff on there, and even in the volumes coming up, there's just dates on things, and I sometimes I remember pieces of that, and sometimes I don't. I can remember the on the last song on volume 1 is a song called Outer Net, which was the last song on the Overcast record from Atmosphere.
That's
now
right.
The reason that was I put this on there, ultimately I put it on because I paid to have it all replayed for live. Slug wanted a live version of Outer Net like 15 years ago. So I had it replayed and polished up, and I was like, oh yeah, this is real good. He heard it and was like, nah. And I was like, oh, well, I already paid to have the shit made. So I essentially I knew I was going to do something with it one day. I didn't realize it was going to be this, but that's ultimately why it's on there. But I also thought I do like it. I truly like it. So it was like, oh, I could show maybe if the deep people that might really be into that stuff, they could be like, oh, this is how they do some of the live stuff. They recreate the live stuff. Most people probably wouldn't realize, but a lot of our live stuff is technically redone. You know what I mean? And stuff added to it that whether or not people could tell, I have no idea. But we add stuff and make them more up to date or interesting to us. You know what I mean? And that Outer Net beat is if you played that Outer Net beat next to the Outer Net beat from Overcast, you'll be like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, this is kind of weird. That's gross. I wouldn't put this out either. Slug was right. This shouldn't be out. But I thought it was interesting to show that kind of stuff, That was definitely my sound at the time. I used to use a lot of classical records. And I used to think that, oh, I'll use classical records because I can't get sued for them. That was, and plus you could find them in dollar bins. You know what I mean? So I'm a dollar bin junkie. Yeah.
Makes sense. I love that. On the other side of that, going back on the other side of that, in the case of doing, these different sketch versions for songs and taking a different song to a different place, how often is that methodology at work for you when you're working on variations of songs?
All the time. I always start off, I would say 90% of the time, everything I do is just a sketch. Like I'll just do something for that, just because, I'll turn on the equipment and just do whatever. I'll do literally whatever, like whatever comes to mind, Then I'll just put it away and forget about it. And if I come back to it a month later or whatever, then I'll see the true value in it, you know. Or maybe I just can't get it. Maybe in my brain I'm like, I can't wait till the next day to hear it again, and I'll play it and go, oh, this is dope. Or I'll play it and go, I need to forget about this for another year. And when I get back to it, I'm like, oh, this is what's missing. Oh, this is what's missing, you know. I do like that these days. I kind of take a weird time with everything. Everything's in a slow rotation to some degree, you know. Or sometimes I could make something in 10 minutes, lay it down on Pro Tools or whatever. Don't go back to it for 6 months. Go back to it, just randomly going through things and go, oh, this is tight as is. I didn't need to add a thing, and I'll just give it to whatever, you know what I mean? So I just take a little more. I take a little more time than I used to. Back in the day, I would just whatever I made that day that's how it is, you know. That's what it is, and I wouldn't put a, you know, for better and for worse, I didn't put the same kind of thought, you know. I think I was back in the day, I was trying to go for a real stripped down raw sound, you know. That was intentional, you know, and very, very sparse and open, especially like my early Atmosphere and Downer Spectrum stuff, you know.
Yeah, I can hear it. You mentioned the word value.
Yeah.
Now, have there been cases where you, like you say, you go back to a beat and you might not necessarily recognize the value in that song yourself until somebody, let's say a slug, talks about how good a song is? Does that ever happen? Do you ever underestimate the value of a beat you've made?
Yeah, all the time. All the time. And there's been many things I just kind of play by accident, and somebody will go, oh, what's that? What's that? I'm like, oh, that? A prime example would be Brother Ali. We were doing this. There's a song called Forrest Whitaker. It just so happens to be his biggest song. And I literally, he tells the story too. I don't know how he tells it in his animated version, but my animated version goes like this. We're just messing around, looking for whatever, and he's super picky, like with beats. You could tell how picky he is because the things he has are specific to him, you know. Plus people don't know this, he's actually a great beat maker. He's really good, like superb. He just doesn't normally do much with them. It's crazy. Like he's one of those people that are talented at everything, but you would only know because he raps so good that's all that sticks out. But he's good at everything. All right, nonetheless, let me back up. So we're digging around, and he's just not liking anything that I'm playing for whatever. So I'm like, you know, I'm just going through disc at this point. So back then I would just skip through the tapes and whatever, and with things I had made. So I got frustrated, I guess, is just start putting in any old random disc to the ASR 10 and playing whatever. And that popped up. I was like, oh, this is corny. Like, to me, I was like, why? I gotta, this is not what I thought this would be. And he's like, wait, hold on. And I was like, oh, shit. Now I'm stuck with this thing. And so, because he started freestyling what ultimately be that song. So that's a prime example of me. Now, and if that day wouldn't have happened, that song wouldn't be like that. I'm sure he would have wrote that song eventually, something like it. But I think that kind of music, not seeing the real value in it, that it just has to have the right song on it. You know, sometimes, and there's a valuable lesson, and my career is based on this, actually. When I look back, it's not about how great the beat is necessarily. Like the song has to be great. It has to you know, kind of mesh together well. They have to be married, and because a great song on the wrong beat, it could be on a great beat, but if it doesn't work as a song, then I don't know where the value in that is, you know what I mean? So my true my true thoughts are I need it to be a great song, you know? And
Oh yeah,
sometimes I just don't see that. I don't see that value in a beat sometimes until after the fact, you know? The people that can do that, the people that can do that are amazing. I can't believe that people can do it, but that's not how I work, you know?
that's crazy. By the way, that's just
Hmm.
blown my mind.
Yeah. 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 It's a trip. Yeah.
So, how long into producing a beat do you know that it's not working out the way you had intended it to work out? How soon does that happen for you generally?
Um, hard to say. Um, it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to say. Sometimes, uh, maybe after maybe after 30 minutes or an hour, I'm like, I wonder if this is anything. But I'll at least get the basic idea down because, like I said, nowadays I know that it could find its home, or I could find the right instrument to put on it, or I could find the right drums. Or if I had it replayed, maybe it would be something else. You know what I mean? So now I
Mhm.
don't, I never just stop and throw something away. I don't do that at all. Like everything I have is somewhere. Now, whether I can access it or if I want to access it, that's a whole nother thing. But
Sure.
if once I start something, I'll at least commit to the idea that I have it. You know, I don't, I rarely have just said stop this and turned it off. You know.
And it becomes this evolving sketch of sorts for you, which takes us
Yeah.
to
Hmm.
Lovely on this project. I'm curious as to how many different sketches of Lovely did you make for whenever? And at which point during those versions did you know that Nikki Jean would provide the vocals for the track?
I I had like maybe three versions of that beat at first, maybe. Um, and then ultimately I took like maybe the second version I had and I took it out to the Bay Area and I had the G Coupe and Graham play on it and or and kind of just make it just more dynamic and all the things, you know, just give it more everything. And I sat on that actually for a little while and then because the rhythm is kind of strange in a way. So uh I just held on to it for a second, just arranged it a certain way. Um, and then yeah, I gave it to Slug, and then he's the one that got Nikki Jean. That was his thing. Like he was like,
Got it.
oh, this would be tight if she did this. Um, that yeah, that had nothing to do with me at necessarily. He asked me if it was cool to do it, and I was like, yeah, if you think that'll work, I'm down. Yeah.
Is it tricky to tell a good idea from a bad idea when you're producing as often as you are, knowing how often you're making these beats? How do you measure the quality bar? And in a case of working with Slug, who you just mentioned, how do you collectively decide which ideas to keep and which ideas to scrap and which ideas to pause on?
That's the thing nowadays. Well, we used to scrap ideas or talk about things a little more in depth at first. You know what I mean? But meaning we were just sitting around the house talking shit for an hour before we start. Like we don't necessarily do that much anymore. Now uh we'll do a basic you know have a conversation about the theme of an album, like what we're trying to say, both of us, whatever we're trying to say, and then I just give them one beat at a time now. Like he doesn't come over and listen to 20 things and pick out something that he's in the mood for. You know, we don't do that anymore. Uh, he just goes one at a time. Just funny enough, though, the other day I just gave him 5 because I didn't know we're starting something new, and I just didn't know how to start off. So I needed a more of a direction from him to see if he was in the mood to go a certain way I'm thinking of going, and he was all into it. So, you know, I don't know if that really answers everything, but it's evolving. You know, it's constantly evolving. Usually, I think each song we try to treat as its own life, and we get all the way till it's done, like from beginning to end. So my part, I've done all my parts. He's done all his parts. We've discussed it along the way, what needs to change to make it the best song it can be, right? So we'll change certain ways he approaches things. Maybe we'll change my drums. We'll change things as it go, but the soul of the song stays the same technically from beginning to end. And we will get to the end and then decide whether or not we want anybody else to hear it.
Right.
These days, 9 times out of 10, we'll probably let it go out. You know what I mean? Because it's like whatever at this point, you know. So as long as it's not horrible, you know what I mean?
Of course.
Yeah, but generally we feel pretty confident nowadays in almost all of what we do. So yeah, and that's a blessing and a curse, you know, I guess.
I can imagine. What do you like to start with when you're making a beat? What comes first for you?
The emotion usually. So I want. Usually, I'd like a memorable line, you know. So like if it's whether it's a sample or if I'm playing something or whatever it is, I just want something I can kind of that sticks to me, you know, something that just if I turn it off, I walk away and I'm like still humming it, you know. I like that type of stuff. The usually the more dramatic, the better to me. And every blue moon, I'll start with drums just to do something different and switch it up. Those joints usually don't come out the best for me. That's usually for the more of like the hardcore type people that make the serious boom bap stuff. I think you know what I mean. Like my stuff has a little more in the more emotional area, I think, for the most part.
When you think about your evolution from when you started producing to now, what would have been sort of among some of the most significant shifts in technology for you that influenced the way you make music today? Can you speak to some of those changes that challenge your scope as a producer?
Yeah, it seems like nowadays it seems like every month, but something changes. But back when I started, it felt like every 5 to 10 years, you know, there would be some kind of major change. But I was always behind. I've always been behind. I've always been more of a slower learner. I don't adjust to new technologies fast as everybody else. Even in the 80s, when I would cut up, you know, break beats one, you know, have 2 of them, and then I would make my fundamental break beat, and then I would scratch the hooks on another track, basically. Or that was before 4 tracks, actually. So I would put it on my boombox, go through the mixer, and then make another layer onto just a cassette tape, regular cassette tape. So that was one way. Then I've discovered 4 tracks and had to learn that. Then I drum machine, obviously I had to figure out how those work. Each time there's been these weird evolutions, and then you get to the 8-track, then you get to the reel to reel, and then all of a sudden computers are a thing, you know, and that was probably the worst one for me, because I just didn't want to get involved with computers, you know what I mean? And it just I couldn't comprehend making music on it or being anywhere part of that. And slowly but surely, I did, and I've gotten to there. I still use an ASR 10, but it's more of like just a sketch pad and just a sound. it does a lot of heavy lifting for the drums and stuff like that. Like I'll sample just any old snare and it just kind of it does something to it, you know. So once again, I felt like I went a little long there, but the point is it changes, you know, quite frequently. And for me, it just takes a while, man. You know, all these things take a while. Like I haven't jumped into stems whatsoever. It seems interesting, but you know, I guess we've touched a couple little things on this Ali record I'm working on. We did a little bit of stem stuff, but you know, it's things are constantly moving, you know. So I'm like, oh man, we'll see, you know. Every time there's something that kind of moves the needle a little bit for you. But for me, I guess, you know, maybe personally when we did You Can't Imagine How Much Fun We're Having, that was the time I really felt like I just took over that record in a certain kind of way, where I was like, you know, for whatever reason, for maybe me being self-conscious and insecure about our place in hip-hop, where people were saying we're emo or we're this or that, and me taking offense to it rather than embracing it like I should, because you're lucky to have anything in this business. So I really wanted to make a super hip-hop record, and my version of what that is at that time. That's 2005 it came out, but I probably started on 03, 04 on that one, you know. And so that had true intentions on creating a record that was as hip hop and as I could make, or as I thought it was, you know. And very much Bomb Squad influenced, with all other tricks that I had known up to that date. And then Slug he started writing to music in a different way than he had before, and so he did his thing. And when he was out on tour back then, I didn't tour with him. We recorded all these songs. He went on tour for God knows how long, and I went in the studio and just manipulated the record a little bit. I just kind of did whatever to the whole album, and I pushed it together, and with the help of Joe Mabbitt, my engineer, and that's what we created. That, and when Slug got home, he was like, okay, I like this, this, and this, and I hate this, this, and that. And we made, you know, that's when I was like, oh, I can do this in another way now. I could do, before that, I think I was more like, you know, we're gonna sit down all together and put these things together, you know, especially with Atmosphere. And it was definitely more Slug influenced in that way. You know, I was always like, what would you like to do? Like I felt like I worked for him, you know what I mean? That's how I was looking at it. I was like, I'm going to try to create something for you. I'm trying to make this for you, which was great. I like making things custom for people, you know. By time You Can't Imagine started, and ever since then, it's been about what can we do? You know what I mean? Like how do I make this, like for lack of a better word, like some gangstar type shit. Like obviously totally different, but more of a, hey, so even the next record after that, I worked with all musicians to redo everything. There's no samples, right? So that was another thing. And that was me being like, I'm going to finally do my Dr. Dre thing, you know, have musicians play everything and but still make it hip hop. And and he's going to do his thing, and I'm going to custom it for him, but it's together, you know. It's together, yeah. So I think that era was profound for me, you know.
In what ways do you think you've grown in that decade and a half since producing When Life Gives You Lemons, You Paint That Shit Gold?
Since then, there's been I've been touring ever since then. Well, I started touring in 05, so almost 20 years of that. And then in all the records we've done, I guess this is real kind of weirdly detailed, but back then I was so nervous about getting all my samples replayed, right? So like we were replaying all these things and I was so nervous about it all, and we would spend hours trying to get this perfect synth sound to replay this piece that I had, and we had like 50 songs and we did all these things, and it was a lot of work, a lot of musicians. I probably worked with 10 people, you know what I mean? There was one time we were sitting around creating this song called Breakaway, and we've got like 10 synthesizers in there. Everybody's trying to figure out how to play this piece and parts and all these things. It was a big science project, you know. Fast forward, you know, to now, or even the last 8-10 years or so, I learned to relax on that. And I'm not trying to get exactly what's on that sample. I'm trying to get a vibe of what's on that sample, you know? So I'm not spending all day trying to recapture that on the sample. I'm recapturing whatever I feel like sounds best today. You know what I mean? So that's and it's stopped me from losing my hair and losing and getting gray. You know what I mean? Because I was driving myself insane there was probably like 3 to 5 years, you know, between like, let's say 07 and 2012. All those records between Atmosphere and even Brother Ali, because I did an album with him where I had musicians called Us, and all the work that was put into those things, all these crazy details, and I'm happy for that and I'm glad for that. But I have evolved enough to trust, you know, and I've learned to trust certain things, you know what I mean, that I might have worked at longer back then, but now I'm more like, no, this is good, like this is good, this is different, but just as good, you know. Yeah, and different is sometimes better, you know.
This distinction you're talking about between perfection versus purpose, who was it that helps you bring this full circle and informs that philosophy?
I think just life, you know, just a life, you know what I mean? Life has taught me that, you know, because spend a lot of time just sitting around, you know, trying to perfect something that it's quite there's times for it, you know. There's times when just make sure when you get to this point that you really feel it. What is your intention on making this perfect? Why is it got to be perfect? Who is it perfect for? Is it truly for you? You know, once you get to that point, I think, at least for me, like I just got to get it for me. Then if it gets past slug, I don't care no more, because that's all I care about, really. You know what I mean? Obviously I care what the fans think, but that's I can't control that whatsoever. There's nothing I can do about anybody else. But what I can do is make it good enough for Slug or whoever I'm working for or with. I can make it work for that, you know. And if they like it, then that's all that matters, you know.
who would have been some of those earliest influences that turned you on to producing? Who pushed you to think about your own ideas and this possibility of articulating your own sounds when you started making beats?
There's, so many, back when I first started, it was all about DJing, I didn't even know what the producer was necessarily, but like, so Grandmaster Flash and DST in specific, where it's just the way he scratched and did these weird mixes. I never could comprehend how he was doing it. You know what I mean? And then as I learned over time, I was like, oh, okay, still genius. What he did. And so, and then the Molly Maw era, and then, even Dr. Dre had these mixtapes in the 80s that were like super complicated. I couldn't even comprehend how to make them, and I figured out how to do it. Eventually learned how to do those, and so it's just like that, and obviously when he made records back then, they're genius. Those records he made in the 80s and early 90s, they're untouchable, to this day. So it's kind of like, especially the mixing of samples, instruments, and scratches, and even some excellent raps. You know what I mean? So like, all of those kinds of things. And then the mixture of the Molly Mall style stuff, and Q-Tip. I just love Q-Tip so much, and there's been so many things along the way, and it continues on. It's hard to keep up nowadays with people's names because it's hard to find out who did what, and I'm just at a stage in my life where looking people up and all that is not doesn't fit into my daily process. But there's so many dope people nowadays to me. It's just that back then when I was a kid, I had more time to read, figure out who's this and how things were done. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
So all those things that stuck with me all this time.
What's your relationship with instrumental albums as a fan today? Do you have any favorite in the last 10 years that kind of changed your perception of what an instrumental album could be?
I can't, I would say this. Early on, I didn't like instrumental records. They just didn't speak to me. All right, obviously the DJ Shadow and RJD2 records, they're amazing, right? But that wasn't in my realm of thinking. I wasn't that's not how I was thinking about stuff. But to me, that's some of the first instrumental hip hop records to me. And that's a long time ago now. That's all 20 plus years ago. And as things have changed, I think the idea that more people are interested in anything. It seems like you can have a lo-fi thing or high octane polished piece of music, or you could have a 1 minute thing. You can have a 3 minute jam, whatever. You can have a 10 minute thing. The rules are all out the window. The way it just makes me feel like, oh, I could just do all these weird ideas and nobody's gonna blink. You know what I mean? Where, let's say 20 years ago, I thought that your instrumental record had to be a certain thing, had to be a certain way. So I only saw it one way. You know what I mean? It just took time to realize, and the way people are, that it has adjusted the way I see things. So essentially, I've been influenced by everybody. So I've been influenced by the entire culture, the entire, the listening public, and all the producers that release things. Like, I do check out as many things as I can. I skip through things all the time. I think Stone's Throw puts out a lot of dope shit. And you won't even know it sometimes. And I don't even hear about it. And then a couple years later, I'm like, what the fuck is this? You know what I mean? So it's like, it's always something, there's so much out there. And it's just hard for me to keep up. You know what I mean? It's hard to keep up. But but so yeah, I hope I answered that properly because I'm influenced by everything.
That's perfect. That's
And
perfect.
and then I put it down, and putting it down from me, I have like this 4-volume set, so at least I could put like, all right, I could just focus a little bit. I have a template for how I'm going to make each 4 of these, but you know, it can be all over the map within that volume. You know what I mean? I could go all over the place, from a 4-track thing to something I made with some musicians to a pretty polished beat that I thought was something. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. What was the last beat you produced for this project, specifically Volume 1? What's the newest beat on this project?
The newest one is probably good question. I think it was I think it was like Bar One, maybe. I think that might have been the newest thing. But even that's a couple years old. That's even a couple years old now. Because I tried to give it to a few people actually, and no one wanted it. But that's the thing too. Some of these things were legit. Yeah, some of these things are legit rejects. Like I've tried to give them to a few people. And you would think that I would be like, oh, no one wants these. I better hide these. No, 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 no. See, that's the difference between me now and me 20 years ago. No, no, no. This is good to me. I don't care what nobody says. And so be it. You know what I mean?
How do you sort of decide on, which beats you want to keep for yourself versus the beats you actually want to shop as a producer with artists? What's that process like?
Well, that's the thing. I don't shop beats, every now and then somebody will ask me for a few, and then I'll send them to something, 10 or 20 or something. And then I'll my main thing is atmosphere, obviously. That's so, and I do probably make something every day. Sometimes less these days, but sometimes I'll make 2 or 3 things in a day. So who knows, right? I know the atmosphere thing. You know what I mean? I know what works. I know what we need. I know our history. I know the 500 songs we have made in the past, and I know that what we need to do to change it up. You know what I mean? So I always have something on the side for the next atmosphere record. So, and sometimes I'm super excited about something right away, and I'll give it to him right away. But mostly I just stockpile stuff until he's ready to start writing the next album, and then we'll be like, hey, this is the theme we should go, or blah blah blah, and we'll talk about that. So that being said, all the rest of the shit I have is just wherever, so I don't have access to the amount of artists I once did for various reasons, but when they do show up, I don't necessarily have 100% of a, hey, this is best for you, blah blah blah. Except for like Ali, I have a good idea what's good for Ali, but I like to let him hear a lot of different stuff. Yeah.
Is there a wish list artist for you to work with that you have in mind? Do you ever think about an artist you could work with one day?
Not as much as I used to. I used to have those kind of desires and wishes and stuff like that. Not as much anymore, but I am more open, obviously, honestly, to way more people than I ever thought I would before. I'm almost down to try anything now. I don't care. You know what I mean? I really just open to whatever. Just to see what happens, because you never know, right? But I do have this strange feeling that I want to work with a singer, probably a female singer, and along the lines of more of a Portishead kind of thing or something. You know what I mean? Not to, not obviously it'd be my own way of looking at it or seeing stuff like that. But I would get a kick out of trying something like that.
That would be dope.
Yeah.
Couple songs from the last Atmosphere album I wanted to talk about, knowing there's two variations, one of which being a reprise. Were there any other sketches for OK?
On for okay, there was, the actual original beat was like this sample thing that was a little choppy, and it had it had a vocal in it. It had this weird little vocal piece in there that I knew when I made the beat. As soon as I picked out the sample, I was like, oh, I already know I'm getting rid of that and I'm getting rid of this. I can work like that now. Now I can make beats with the idea that you have to have vision for the future, like in the sense that I'm sampling something with all this junk on it that I'm going to get rid of. It's kind of like working with stems, but not really, because I'm going to reimagine the whole thing. So I'll make this beat, I'll make it choppy, or maybe I'll make it just stiff as a board. It doesn't much matter. I got the basic soul of what I'm going to do. Then I'll get with my musician guys, we'll play it. They'll add whatever they think is right or however they see it. And then we'll talk about it and work on it and flush it all out. I'll take it home and I'll sit on that for a long time, because I need to re-listen to it with fresh ears, usually. And then I'll go, oh, I just need to rearrange it. I need to arrange it so that it's digestible. You know what I mean? And that's something like the OK thing. And all of my music is made like that to some degree, right? But OK, that's a prime example of that. And the funny thing about that beat, I swear I made that, man, 2015, 16, something like that originally. And then I had it replayed maybe 17, 18. And then when I had it replayed, and it was this beautiful piece, and we had that beautiful intro on there, all these things were so dope. I was like, and it was so like optimistic sounding, right? It had this optimistic sound. And I was like, you know what? This has to start a record. We can go dark after that. I don't care. But we need to start a record like this. And I presented it stuff like that. I was like, look, I don't know what you're on right now. This was during 2020, obviously, too. During a very, was it? Yeah, I think it was like during 2020. I was like, hey, this is a pretty dark time. But this is the song we should make for the first song on the album. And he was like, into it, wrote that song. And that sketch is that came from that was an old thing. Like if you would have heard that sketch, you would be like, ugh. My musicians made that happen. My engineer Joe Mabbitt made that happen. Slug's lyrics really made that happen. I just was the guy that brought all those people together to make it clear, you know what I mean? And I had an original vision, and they helped me make it all come true.
They helped you crystallize it, right?
Yeah. So that was my job. And it's technically that album is basically my favorite album I've ever done. But that album also has a couple sketches that are just the sketch. There's things
Which tracks?
I think it's the third song on there. I can't remember the name of it. A third or fourth beat. You could kind of tell, because it's just super grimy, and it has 1 2 y'all, 1 2 y'all, and on the background. And originally when I made that beat, I was gonna get the guitar replayed for the hook, and then without the hook, it would have the bass line and some heavy drums, but you know, a traditional song like that. But I just ended up being like, oh, this is dope raw. You know what I mean? But I saw it years later too. Like I made the sketch, another one I made like probably in 18 or something like that. Didn't listen to it again until 2020 or whatever. And I was thinking about getting it replayed, and then I was like, wait a minute, now this is dope, like it like this, and straight off the board, I didn't process anything, or it's just like boom,
Amazing.
so that was kind of, and that, to be honest with you, that was the realities record was influential in my instrumental stuff, because that so many other realities exist simultaneously. All those, there's all kinds of various styles on there, right? Like I'm meaning there's like just a sample beat, or there's a replay, or there's something I played on the synthesizer, or whatever, you know. There's all these, or just a straight up just random ass loop, you know, nothing added to it, you know.
Yeah.
Some wild scratching or whatever. And then I was like, oh, this can be done. Before I was like, I need this to be this, and I have a vision, you know. I always have visions, like I want the whole record to be this cohesive thing with one sturdy sound, you know what I mean? Now I'm like, well, now I could do that still, but all over the map,
Right.
and still be cohesive. Like I finally figured out how I could do it for me, you know what I mean? Like a million other people may do it, I don't know, I have no idea, but for me, for my spirit, this is what I had to do, you know.
And for you, that record is the closest to perfection I think you've been your entire career so far. So far.
Thank you, man. Yeah, thank you. I agree too. Yeah, it has everything I could possibly try. Yeah.
Tell me about working with G Coop for the reality record. Can you maybe describe that process musically and how it usually comes together when you're working together?
Oh, it works where I'll bring in just 30 beats or something, and we'll just kind of, you know, I'll book him for a week, right? Well, back when I lived out in the Bay, you know, he lives in the Bay, and I'm in Minneapolis, and you know, for those that out there that don't know the distance, it's like a 4-hour flight. So, and it's a time thing, you know what I mean? Like when I was out in the Bay, I could book them for a month, and I created like Southsiders and stuff like that. But this time it was more like over the last 2 or 3 years before 2020, I had been, oh, you didn't ask that question, but I'm sorry, man. Working with them is like, yeah, working with them is just like, I'll have a folder of beats that I made. Maybe some I have visions of grandiose ideas, and some of them I have no idea. So we'll just play it, and if he feels it, he could just play a basic part of it, and then we'll talk as we go. He'll improvise whatever, and he'll like, what do you think goes here? You know, I don't know, put an oboe there. You know what I mean? I always say oboe, and he thinks it's funny because it's just funny to me. And so we'll just throw things on until it's I got tons of stuff. I need tons of tracks, right? Usually, honestly, we could tighten up the drums. He could put the bass line on there and one little piano hit, and I swear to God, it's dope to me. And I could put it out as is. But I'm there. We're working on it. Let's make it fun. Let's stack it with 1,000 things. You know what I mean? Not literally 1,000. Let's say I'll get like 20 tracks of things, pianos and all these guitars and synths and whatever. We'll replay, get this sample replayed in a certain way. You know what I mean? Sometimes it veers off from what the sample is. Sometimes it's spot on. It's just, who knows, right? And sometimes it just depends on what kind of sample it is. Like I don't bring in samples like James Brown. Not that he couldn't play that stuff. It's just, that's not what I'm going to do. You know what I mean? I'm bringing in some more weirder stuff in that regard, you know? So, and we do some funky stuff sometimes too, but usually it ends up being more of the 80s things. I'll bring in like some like for lack of a better word, I guess the kids are calling it boogie stuff. You know what I mean? So
Right.
I'll put that down and I'll bring in that type of junk because I love that shit. And yeah, that's how it goes. You know, I'll just try to in that week's time. I'll get maybe 20 replays, you know, or 20 versions of things, and then out of those 20, I'll have to bring those home, dissect them, maybe rearrange them. Sometimes they're good just as is. Sometimes I got to get rid of stuff. Maybe I'll add a couple little things, maybe, and then I'll present it to Slug. And then when it gets to Slug, or you know, whoever, but usually Slug, they'll tell me what they think and what I need to get rid of or add, and blah blah blah. You know, and then we'll arrange more from that. You know, so it's a conveyor belt. You know. That's how it works. The Lord. That's how it works. That's how it works. The Lord. That's how it works. That's how it happened last morning. It happened last morning. It happened last morning. It happened last morning. There was a flash, no warning. But Coop is Coop is just a machine. He's the real deal, and that super talented beyond words, you know.
He really
And
is.
it's crazy because he has a few friends that are just as dope as he is, and it's just crazy to me, you know.
If you had to pick some of the most defining sessions that stand out as memories professionally, personally, and, you know, for the culture at large, which sessions come to mind specifically for you?
Maybe making the Southsiders record because there was a big transition. Because right before that, which there was another session. There was this other time where we had so after so after Lemons and the success of Lemons, we started going that direction more, and we had some band members that were part of us that were played with us on tour. So we took those guys and made them more part of what we do. So we booked out like a whole year at my house and just created tons of music with these two cats and
Nice.
And some other people, and it was a dope experience. I was learning Pro Tools on how to record and stuff like that, and it was taking me forever.
Oh, so you're
Talking
learning that
about
in real time?
yeah, because I never did it before. You know what I mean? Even though it was already an ancient process, I take forever to learn stuff. But I would just record them. But my idea was to have them play live over my drum track, and I would have a sample beat playing. They would play whatever, and then I would mute the sample after a while, and then they would just turn it into their own thing. And so we wrote probably 100 beats that way, maybe more.
Wow.
And which ended up creating a Family Sign, and it also created there was another record, I can't remember the name of it, but there was another record we did, and it was a all over the place kind of thing, and it was dope and it was fun, but it also didn't I didn't feel right in that process at some level, and I can't that's a deeper story than we need to get into, but I just didn't know where I belonged in it all after a while. Hence, a year later or two, a couple years later, that those guys weren't working with us anymore. They went and did other things, and I ended up started working with G Coop. And so as dope as that process was with those two dudes, when I went to G Coop, it was like, oh, here goes somebody that likes rap. He loves rap music. You know what I mean? Or just loves all music, but he's gets what I'm trying to do. Those other guys didn't really care for rap music necessarily. They just loved playing music, which I needed at that time because it made me open my eyes up to music I hadn't, like, I'd never cared about rock and shit before, really. You know what I mean? Those guys made me really start looking at that in a different way. Prior to that, I only sampled the shit. You know what I mean? But then I started listening to it and appreciating it. You know, with going to G Coop, those sessions for what ultimately ended up being a lot of Southsiders. And actually, we made a lot of the Felt 4 at that time too, believe it or not, which didn't come out for like 8 years later or something. Well, we did a lot of that music around that time, you know, and that changed my life. You know, that the living in the Bay, working with G Coop, and seeing how to make this stuff in an even more different way than I had been doing prior to that. It changed my life. Yeah.
What can you tell me about the future volumes of Collection of Sounds? Where does the direction of sounds go next?
The next one, you know, the thing is, I think they're coming out every 2 or 3 months or something, which is, you know, it makes me nervous in the sense of I never released an instrumental record, and then all of a sudden I'm got the balls to release 4, right? In a row before I even prove that I've could make my money back or whatever. So it's not about that, but it's more like uh, I'm a nervous artist. You know, I feel like this is the first time I've done this, and there's part of me that second guesses sometimes. You know, which is the worst feeling in the world, to second guess. But I am confident that each one of these pieces are different enough with the same template. You know what I mean? So this one here is basically the same kind of structure as the next 4. It's just a different style in the kind of music. So like the second version or second volume is more of the stuff I've done with Felt. It's more of the Fly stuff, a little more maybe party-ish, if that's a way to put it. You know, it's just a little more on the Fly shit, but it still has the basic fundamental template. You know what I mean? Little beats here and there, little loops, little interesting little sound bites, you know, dope cuts, whatever. And that third, and you know, and there's a couple sketches I think on there too, you know. And then the third one is more like the stuff I've been influenced by dub stuff. Like I have not done a whole bunch of that, but there is in a lot of my records where I've used, you know, reggae samples, let's say, right, and some dub stuff, and so that's the third one is more influenced in that area. So there's more of that sound, and I even explored some of the taking some of the vocals from the songs I used in the past and just dubbed them out, kind of like, you know, the dub stuff. And but more even so to me was more like how Molly Mall used to do it, you know. Like I wish now when I look back, I didn't do it like this, but I wish I would have done the vocal delays way too loud, but I just didn't have the balls. Maybe next time. But that's what that's what the third one is, more like that. And then the fourth one has a little more of a darker edge. Not completely all the way, but it just has a more dark and maybe even more of my newer stuff, let's say. But you wouldn't be able to tell, you know, like it's still fundamentally the same beat making process, you know what I mean? So, and I think they're all 4 different enough, but all similar in in a way, you know. So yeah, I'm super proud of it. And when it's all done and said and done, you know, you put the 4 records together and it makes like a nice little cute puzzle. If you get the vinyl piece.
I wish I could show my appreciation for this podcast. I wish I could respond to it somehow, or be notified in the future when
Fly Fidelity
updates, because it's so great. But I don't think there's a way I can do any of those things.
Uh-oh, you're wrong.
Subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and SoundCloud and never miss an episode. Find us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook.
My peoples, are you with me where you at?